everybody. I'm Kelly Boyce, your hostess for Writers Talking, and this is my podcast, vlogcast, YouTube channel about basically all things writing. I am a published author of historical romance novels. I have 15 published books, and I am working on my 16th, which is going great, she says with all due sarcasm. Anyways, I thought now that I've quit my day job and am doing this full time, I thought it would be kind of nice to have an outlet to feel like I'm talking to somebody and not just the dog. And kind of create a bit of a community around this. So welcome everybody. I hope you'll stick around. Feel free to like and subscribe down below. And I will say, as I was setting this up, and I do have another YouTube channel, but it's all knitting related, so it's got nothing to do with this. So this isn't like my first rodeo in front of the camera. But today, what I managed to do as I was trying to set this up was to accidentally hit the emergency button on my phone. And then I had my hands full and I didn't have my glasses on. So I was trying to figure out how to turn it off and I was just making it worse. So finally I got a call from emergency services after I finally disconnected myself to ensure that everything was fine and that there was no emergency. And I suggested not unless stupidity could be considered an emergency, which I was happy to find out was not. This is going to be my little corner of the YouTube where I talk about writing and all that good stuff. You will from time to time see Scout. I'm also hoping from time to time to convince some of my writer friends to join me on the channel, which is why the S is in brackets for Writers Talking. Mostly it's just going to be me, but I'm hoping to drag some of them on here as well. I'll also probably do kind of day in the life vlogs, that sort of thing as well. But for now, I figured I'd just start with a quick intro and say hello and welcome. And I hope you'll join us for the ride. So a little about me, I suppose, would be a good idea. I started writing back in grade 2 when my teacher showed up with a box of plots. Each card had a plot on it. Up until this point, I was considered the daydreamer. That's all I did. It was on every quarter of my report cards. Kelly's a good student, but she spends all day daydreaming. Repeat, 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 repeat. So Mrs. Matheson showed up with this box of plots one day, and that was the first time I realized that all these stories that were in my head, I could put down on paper. And that's when I started writing, and it was probably, I think by junior high, I thought, no, that's what I want to do. I want to be a writer. And I wrote my first full-length novel in my probably 1920. It was a young adult murder mystery. And then I wrote my next full-length novel, which was epic. I mean, at this point, I knew nothing about word count, acceptable word counts. This thing was epic. Like when I printed it off, yeah, it was epic. And I knew nothing about head hopping, POV, but I will say, to this day, I still love that story. Someday maybe I'll go back and clean it up. But it was a Western. I started off writing historical Western romances, and then I had an idea from my friend Catherine Fox, who's also a very prolific writer. She made a comment one day. The comment was basically, can you imagine if you showed up at the wrong party? Something to that effect. And that just something in my brain just went twing, and the story started to evolve, and that became the Sins and Scandals. That was the first book in the Sins and Scandals series, An Invitation to Scandal, and that just started the journey, and I ran with it. I loved that series so much. It was so much fun to write. By the time I was about halfway through one book, I already knew what the second book was going to be, and I couldn't wait to write it. And it was just like such a joyful experience. The only rough part was at the very end when I finished the ninth book. And at that point, I knew I was burned out, but because I was doing both the Harlequin and the indie books at the same time, and I knew I was burned out, but I was like, no, 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 it's fine. I'll be fine. I can do it. I can do it. I'm going to finish the last book because I had planned it to be 10 books in the series. And I could not write that 10th book if my life depended on it. I tried, I think, for a year and a half to write that book. I wrote about 3, 4 different versions of it, all of them bad, couldn't come up with an ending. I was just, it was a mess. And finally, I literally had to concede defeat, which is like, that still bothers me. But, and then of course, we moved our offices, so I couldn't get to the coffee shop in the morning. And then the pandemic hit. It was just like a series of disasters. But at the same time, I think my brain was telling me, I need you to stop for a little bit. I need you to stop. I didn't listen to that voice for about 2 years, and then finally I realized I had nothing. I had nothing left in the tank. I had nothing left in the tank. So I took 2 years off writing, and then I tentatively started tiptoeing back into it because I had the idea for the new series, the Lindwell series, and I really wanted to write it. And that was the first time probably in about 2 to 3 years that I felt like I wanted to write. Not just that I could write, I can do it, but like I wanted to write. I had a story that I wanted to tell. So that is what sort of got me back into it. The only problem is that when you're away from, especially indie publishing, I would say, when you take 3 years off, people forget who you were. I feel like I'm starting back at square one as far as trying to revive my readership and get the new series, get some traction with the new series and stuff like that. So it's going to be a bit of a journey, I think, and we'll see how it goes. I've got so many books that I want to write now, and I'm just going to dive in and write for the joy of it. Try to, keep that at the forefront of my mind instead of writing because I feel like I'm supposed to, if that makes any sense. And that kind of brings me to the starting up the YouTube channel. Was I think I wanted to also build a community that I feel like I lost when the pandemic hit and we weren't having our chapter meetings that we would normally go to. I wasn't meeting up with my critique partners. And all of that seems to have sort of fallen by the wayside a bit because, people move on, and our chapter went online now and it's not like in person anymore. So I thought this would kind of be a really good way to connect with other writers out there or readers or anybody who just loves books. Welcome. You've come to the right place. So this is my office, and this was my office for the last 2 years for my day job. And when I was doing that, I couldn't write in here. Yes, I hear you. Scout's under there, under the desk. That was her usual spot when I was working in here. But when I worked here for my day job, I couldn't write in here because it was not a happy place for me. I felt like I was trapped in here doing a job I didn't want to be doing, and it was just like not exactly the most creative place in the world to be. So I switched. I had always done my writing in coffee shops pretty much because I would write before work. So I would just go to the coffee shop that was near my work when I was over in Halifax. I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada, in case I never mentioned that in in the first little intro. I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada, and I used to work over in Halifax. So I would go over, I would take the early bus over, and then I would write from about 6:30 to 8:39, and then start my work day. So that's how I wrote the entire Sins and Scandals series, which was a 9-book series and 7 full length, and then 2 novellas. And I did that writing, I think I wrote about 2 to 3 books a year, which at the same time, I was also writing the books that I was under contract for Harlequin for, which ended up, you know how you tell yourself, I can do this. Yeah, I got it. I got this, because who's going to turn up an opportunity to write for a publishing contract, which in hindsight, I probably should have turned it down. It was okay. I really enjoyed the freedom of indie publishing, and I still do. And I don't rule out the idea of ever do another publishing contract, but I think the circumstances would have to be the right ones. Obviously, I wouldn't just do it for the sake of doing it. I really do like the freedom of of indie publishing. So, went off on a tangent already, so that's great. What I was saying was, originally, this is my office. This was my day job office, and I took a month away from it to, I think, just get the bad mojo out of it, for lack of a better term. I didn't want to come in here and have my brain associate it with not wanting to be here. I need my writing space to be kind of like a sacred place, which is why I go to the coffee shop, because coffee shops are sacred to me. They give me coffee and oatcakes. But I do want to start doing some writing here as well, because I have more time to write and I can't spend all day at the coffee shop as much as I would like to. Scout would definitely not be happy with that arrangement. I would like to start doing my writing. I think my writing at the coffee shop, and then my editing of what I wrote here in my office. So that is the plan right now. I have a deadline of July 1st to have the second book in the Lindwell series to my editor. And that's going to be a tight squeeze, because this book is just really been kicking my butt. I've got to really kind of knuckle down and get that banged out. I just have to vomit the story out first, get it as clean as I can at that point, and then hand it off to her. And then she gives me her notes, and then the real writing begins. I am a second draft writer. That's the plan. So this is the first book in the series, A Duke in Gentleman's Clothing. The Lindwell series is a bit of a spin-off from the Sins and Scandal series, in that it takes a secondary character from that series and then creates the 3-book series that will be the Lindwell series, or that is the Lindwell series, because the family that spins off from that still has a sister and 2 brothers whose stories weren't told in the original series. So that's kind of the idea for that. And I already have a rough idea of what I want book 3 to be, but when I say a rough idea, I mean really rough. Really rough. Once I hand off the second book in the series, Once Upon a Gentleman, to my editor, I'm then going to start to dive in on the outline of what book 3 will be, and book 3 will be A Gentleman of Ill Repute. Probably get deeper into that as we go along and I get working and kind of get an idea of how I want this YouTube channel to be structured. I haven't really totally figured it out. I've got a rough idea, which seems to be my modus operandi. I got a rough idea. It'll be fine. So